Hi everyone, I'm Kimbyr and this is Kimbyr Live. I am sorry I am late. For those of you that were here early, I apologize. Let me know if my audio is working. That's why I was late. Something was going on here. I did a little something over the weekend for my Patreon and whatnot, and I think I might have messed something up, but let's just hope not, because I am behind. And there will be reasons for that at the end, and I won't forget this time because I made sure to put something here that tells me not to forget to tell you something at the end of this video. But if you're here for the very first time, hello, hi, nice to finally meet you. I am Kimbyr. I have a main true crime channel here on YouTube that's linked below. I also have a true crime podcast, a video podcast here on YouTube with my husband called Dark Livity. I'm about to hit 500,000 on my main channel at some point. So I'm really excited about that. So if you're interested in solved narrative true crime cases, you can check that out. But again, I apologize. I am way behind, but I'm going to spare you the details until the end of this video. I did have my procedure done that I told you about and feeling great about it, but wasn't feeling great the day of. Still kind of like healing on the side of my face. So also had some really bad things happen with my family, including one last night that I haven't told you about. And of course, wedding stress, lack of sleep. So please forgive me. I miss all of you. And oh my God, the Bryan Kohberger case. I was ready to go on live right after this and talk about it. Tell me if that's something you want to do. Might not have enough time today, but I already prepared something for you. So we'll definitely 100% get into that, because that was the reason I created this live channel, is for that trial. Can't believe it. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. At the end, I'm going to tell you more about things that have been going on with me. But remember, where we left off was day 4. So I owe you 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I'm going to tell you right now, we are on day 5 and 6 because I'm going to combine them. And I'm just going to not go into deep detail about things we already kind of know, but I'm going to, of course, play the testimony like I always do for the most important parts from every single testimony for those days. Because when we get into day 7, it is going to be insane. I know some of you have watched ahead. That's fine. But let's get into today's testimony for day 5, Raul Valle. And hi, Sienna, people that are here for the first time. I appreciate you being here for a live for the very first time. The Law Baddies will welcome you. I did not tell Courtney we were going on, so while I'm playing this, I'm going to go and quickly text her and let her know. I don't know if she's already on here, but let's just move forward to the beginning of day 5. And thank you for bearing with me with everything. This is going to be, I usually tell you what's going on, but what happened is we're actually going to be hearing from Ryan Hines. Am I saying that right? Ryan Hines? I think it's Ryan Hines. There's so many names in this case, so forgive me. I'm kind of aloof too, but he is one of the stabbing victims. We heard from him on day 4. He's going to be finishing up his testimony on day 5. They're going to do a short recap about what happened. He was the victim that was stabbed multiple times that night. And he's first going to be talking about that group chat, which is going to be an ongoing part of this case, is the group chat and what happened at the car. Those are reoccurring themes because they lead up to what happened on the grass outside of that house there on Laurel Glen. So let's jump in. Let me make sure I have everything set up as per usual. I think I do. And if you see me disappear, that is because I am grabbing something and I'm going to be texting Courtney. So let's just go ahead and play this part for you and jump right in. Let me make sure the cord is on. Also want to apologize. The audio, the acoustics, the fans, not something I can do anything about, but I will put some closed captions up on the top for you while I'm away doing this. Here we go.
Prior to the fight starting, was the group chat still going on?
I can't recall. I don't know.
Do you know whether or not you had indicated your phone was buzzing in your pocket?
Yeah.
Do you recall whether or not you said anything in the group chat?
I think I mentioned one time just calling them pussies, but that's it. That's all I said. I only said one thing.
Okay. And when you came out into the yard to confront the defendant and Mr. De Silva, were you closer to Mr. De Silva or the defendant?
The defendant.
And at any point in time during the night, do you recall fighting anybody other than the defendant?
No.
So when the fight, I think we played the video yesterday Do we play the video? So the video is playing when it starts. Is that the beginning of the actual fight, or do you, from what your recollection is, or did that?
That's
When did
not
the
the beginning.
when did the fight? With regards to the video,
Yeah.
when did the fight happen? Was it?
That video is probably 20 seconds into the fight.
Okay.
already.
And 20 seconds into the fight, you had already fought with the defendant at this
Yes.
point. And at some point in time, what are you doing after you? Well, tell us again how you fought with the defendant.
So I kind of was just over top of the defendant, punched him in the face 2 times, and then I just felt a jab in my side, and I looked down, and I see the defendant with his right hand clenched up in a ball like this, and he's just poking at my side.
Did you see any weapon on him?
No, I didn't see a weapon or anything. I just seen his fist and just going like this repeatedly over and over again, and just right there on my side.
And when that happened, after that happened, what did you do?
I just like some instinct in me just was like, get off, get away, like just like that. I don't know how to explain it.
And at some point in time, did you lose sight of the defendant?
Yes.
Did you see where he went?
No.
And did you see the defendant after that, before the fight ended? Did you see him after the fight ended?
No.
At some point in time, do you recall watching the fight with Mr. De Silva?
Yes.
And when you were watching that fight with Mr. De Silva, when did it become apparent to you that you were injured?
Like when I heard somebody scream out, "He's got a knife! He's got a knife!"
So when you heard that,
Yeah.
what triggered in your head?
I was just like, he's like, I just heard that, and I was like, he's got a knife. Like, who's hurt? Like, is everybody okay? I didn't even realize I was hurt or anything. And then my buddy Ty Wood came up to me and was like, are you okay? Like, you're bleeding. And he pointed down at my side, and I had bled through all my clothing.
And when you realized that you were bleeding, what did you do?
I like lifted up my shirt, and I wanted to see like what was wrong with me. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know how many times I had been stabbed or anything like that. And like right at the same time I'm realizing I had gotten stabbed, I hear all the bubbles and like my lung collapsing basically, and like bubbles in my chest. It was a really weird sound. I don't know how to describe it. I never want to hear that sound ever again. It kind of like it like haunts me in a way, but I just got super scared. And
So remember, you probably don't because it's been a while, but on day 4, he also talked about this, about not realizing he had been stabbed. We went into a little bit of it, but then the end of the day came. So I wanted to recap here. This is terrible, realizing that you have been stabbed. Now, he is one of the, I would say, rare witnesses that have admitted they were in this fight. He detailed punching the defendant twice, then feeling some kind of stabbing pain during the scuffle. And he admitted he punched him twice in the face after tackling him to the ground. And that terrifying moment when he realized that somebody is screaming out, "He's got a knife." I think that might have been one of the Connery boys. And then he sees blood soaked all over his clothing. He hears a bubbling coming from a collapsed lung, which we're later going to hear from a doctor. And it's been haunting him. I mean, who wouldn't be haunted by everything that's happened that night, especially knowing one of your friends died at the scene of where this is going on? Now, they are going to be showing some exhibits, and they are going to be showing some of his injuries, and I will have to blur some of that. But first, I think he's going to talk a little bit more about his injury before we go forward.
These items that you were wearing the night of May 14th of 2022?
yes,
Appears the black shirt, does that appear to be inside out?
yeah,
States Exhibit 26. Is that the same shirt but right side in?
yep,
And obviously the green sweatshirt, is that yours?
yeah. I don't know whose shoes those are.
Those are not your shoes.
Those are not my shoes.
Exhibit 27, closer up picture of the shirt that you were wearing that night. I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
I think he's going to approach him and just show him the exhibits before we get to see them. And I did remind myself that I am going to have to blur this next part. Let me see if my blur is working. It is working. All right. I reminded myself to blur this. So I don't know where it's going to show up. So we'll just try it here. Somebody mentioned, Odemaris said that she Googled it and YouTube is trying a new XP leaderboard. Never heard of it. Apparently, viewers can earn points called XP for engaging with the stream. And then the top viewers are displayed with a crown icon. Very cool. Never heard of it. I'll look it up later. Thank you for letting us know that. Oh boy, am I learning?
Again, what is States 83?
Me in the hospital.
Now, these injuries to you,
By the way, cannot control their audio. It's really low. Now I feel my audio is low too. Hang on.
point out, looks like appears you have injuries to your nose, your face area, in your head. Were those injuries caused during the fight at 43 Laurel Glen?
No, those were at Lazy Brook.
So when you got into the initial fight at Lazy Brook with the defendant and his friends, that's when that happened?
Yeah.
States 84. This injury here to the top of your head, which looks like the left side of your head.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when that injury occurred?
That's from Lazy Brook as well.
That's also from Lazy Brook, okay.
Sorry that I can't show these, but you know how YouTube will be. They'll take the live down. So this is his scalp. You can see there's blood there. Some of it is dried. It's very apparent that he has a wound inside of his hairline. And this happened at the previous fight when he was at Lazy Brook.
States 85. Can you tell us where States 85 was from?
That's the tube that had to be put in my chest
Do you know why the tube had to be put in your chest at the hospital?
to reinflate my lung.
States 86. What are we looking at in States 86?
So the gauze is where I was stabbed, and then that is part of the tube that was also coming out of my chest.
And this, obviously, this is the left side of your chest?
Yes, sir.
And that is where you got your injuries?
Yeah, on my left side.
States 87.
This is one of his stab wounds. It looks like it's right underneath his underarm. And, oh, that looks bad.
Can you tell us what States 87 is?
That would be my stab wound to my upper chest.
And this is the stab wound that caused the collapsed lung?
Yes, it is.
States 88. Can you tell us what we're looking at in States 88?
That is my stab wound to my hip.
You're around here,
Yeah.
right? And this is the tube?
Yeah, that's the same tube.
Okay. States 89. Is this the same wound? But
This is a very big stab wound. It's he's calling it his hip. It's kind of in the more meaty portion of the side of his body, almost adjacent to his stomach area. And it is actively bleeding with a gaping hole.
uncovered?
Yes.
This is what, a few days after?
Yeah.
States 90. What are we looking at here? This is what?
That would be my stab wound to like my lower butt cheek, pretty much.
So like the hip area?
Yeah.
And again, this tube that's running down, where's that coming from?
That's the same tube that was in my chest.
States 91. Is this the same wound you just mentioned, but uncovered?
Yes, it is.
So you can't really tell in the blur, obviously, but he has his pants partially pulled down and it looks to be a stab wound to his buttocks, like the side of it. It's just terrible. Terrible.
Showing you states 92.
Oh, 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 that's really bad. This is a unclothed picture of him from the side. And it's showing, when you see these dark areas on his body, they're like dark round areas. Those are his stab wounds. So there's one kind of on his waist, one on his buttocks area, and one underneath his armpit, which I don't think you can see in this one.
So it appears to be the right side of your body, but are these injuries on the right side of your body?
No, they're on my left side.
So is this picture being taken in a mirror?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be your upper left chest area where the first stab wound was.
Mm-hmm.
Second stab wound to your lower abdomen area.
Yep.
And then your third stab wound would be on your left side of your hip.
Yes.
And when were these pictures taken, do you know?
A couple weeks after.
Couple weeks. Oh, sorry, I still haven't blurred. I didn't mean to do that. Couple weeks, and they're still, in the process of healing. But what's really hard to listen to is when he starts to describe how emotional this was for him, the lasting trauma of that night. He said that he thinks about it all the time. He replays that night in his head every single day, and he wishes that things had gone differently.
And what has your recovery been like?
Physically, they healed up, but mentally, I've never been the same person.
Why is that?
I can't stop thinking about that night. Like every single day, multiple times a day, I just think about that night and things that I could have done different, things that anybody could have done different, and I just didn't think things like this happen in the world. I don't know. I didn't know there was people like that out there that really wanted to cause harm.
When you were at Laurel Glen that night and those individuals walked on the front lawn and the fight started, did you anticipate the fight being a fist fight?
Yes.
Did you anticipate there ever being any weapons used?
No.
Did you have any weapons at Lazy Brook that night with
No.
you? Did you have any weapons with you at Laurel Glen that night?
No.
Did Ty Wood have any weapons on him?
No.
So he did anticipate a fight, but he didn't have weapons. His friends didn't have weapons. And of course, I'm going to get right to cross-examination. It's hard for me not to put it on a little bit faster because, they're talking kind of slow. But, I don't want to go too fast. But on cross, they're going to talk about, what do you think? Alcohol consumption. We're still talking about that. We're still talking about that on cross. So let's start there.
And you went over to a friend's house. Was that Natalia Ridzik's house?
Yes.
And you hung out there at Natalia's, right?
Yep.
You told us that you were doing some drinking there while you were hanging out.
Yes.
And that was, you had no more than 2 beers, right?
No more than 2 beers.
How do you know no more than 2?
Because I know it was no more than 2 beers.
What makes you so certain about that, no more than 2?
Because it was only 2 beers.
And that was only in 30 to 40 minutes of being there that you had those 2 beers?
Yes.
Power drinking that night?
What?
I'm sorry?
Was that power drinking? Was that
I'm
fast
not
for you, or
sure
was
what-
that
Power drinking, sir? Sir. Oh, no.
a fairly regular speed to have 2 beers in a 30 to 40 minute period?
That's pretty normal.
Were you power drinking that night? By the way, look what shirt I'm wearing. Yeah, he was power drinking.
And then you told us that you got invited over to Austin Leifer's house, right?
Yes.
How did you know Austin?
I met him in 8th grade when I moved to Shelton.
Also when you moved to Shelton.
Yes.
I don't think we need to go into all this. He's going to reiterate, did you know this person? Did you know that person? Did you know this person? It's like, yes, they all knew each other. And it's funny when they say since childhood, because I'm like, y'all, we're still children. You were like 16 years old. But I understand growing up, t-ball, sports with their friends as kids, Little League. They knew each other their whole lives. So Mr. Smith, he's starting to get on my nerves around this day of trial. He was starting to get on my nerves. Somebody gave me a thumbs down. Don't know why. Maybe they didn't like my shirt. Mr. Smith is highlighting that Ryan himself was involved in this fight and that he had a motive to be angry because he had been beaten up at the earlier brawl. And by the way, if you put a thumbs down, don't worry, I'm not mad. It might be a thumbs down because you're thumbs downing what's happening and everything like that. Don't worry, I'm really not offended. But he got beat up earlier. So what Mr. Smith is trying to show is like, well, you had a reason to want to start this other fight. And he's suggesting that you were looking for payback. But of course, Ryan's going to deny any revenge plot. And he just maintained that the defendant became the aggressor in that second encounter. So we're going to hear about that.
Blocking his view so that he couldn't see you give the beers to these two people?
Griffin?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Do you recall where Griffin was?
I believe he was right next to me.
And that wasn't enough for Mr. Snyder, right? He
No.
decided he was going to grab those beers from you.
Yes.
Mr. Valle didn't grab the beers from you.
No.
Mr.
This is the first brawl when they were grabbing his beers that led to the supposed motive for what happened later. But it was really that they came there and they were being taunted and his beers were being taken away. The defendant was there with his friends. We've kind of already gone over that.
De Silva, did you see him?
Yes.
He didn't say anything to you.
No.
He didn't grab the beers from you.
No.
Ultimately, Snyder grabs the beers from you. You said you were trying to be cool and make some friends.
Yes.
And at that point, you got upset with Snyder, right?
Yes.
He said you weren't going to stand for this, right?
Yes.
You were upset at that point, right?
I was. I wasn't going to get pushed out and bullied.
Sure. You said, I'll fight you right now for this beer, right?
Yes, I did.
And you put your hands up to fight.
Yes.
And y'all make it out into the driveway from the garage, right? And we saw the video there.
Yes.
And in that video, we see you and Mr. Snyder squared up, right?
Yes.
And you're circling a little bit for position, right? It's a fight going on,
Yeah.
right? You're not just standing there toe to toe like we see some old school bare knuckles boxers, right? You're moving around. You're circling.
A little bit, yes.
You bump into Mr. Valle?
No.
No, you
No.
don't bump into Mr. Valle.
No, I do not bump into Mr. Valle.
Okay. Where was Mr. Valle?
He was hiding behind me.
Hiding behind you?
You could say that, yes.
Hiding behind what?
Me.
The reason he's putting it that way is because he got sucker punched. So at this point, he doesn't know where the defendant is in his point of view. He's behind him. He knows that from the video later because we know that out of nowhere, he gets hit.
Just he was behind me. I didn't
He
know
was
he
just
was there.
behind you,
Yeah,
right? He
was-
wasn't hiding.
Sure.
You were aware he was there.
No.
You knew there was a circle of people around you watching, correct?
Yes.
And you were circling for position.
No.
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 You were just going to stand still and let Mr. Snyder come towards you.
I wouldn't really say it was circling, but it was more of just like a little like get a better position. You could say that, yeah.
Right. You're not just going to stand still and let somebody who you've just challenged to a fight just come at you and start throwing blows, right?
Well, in all honesty, that was my first fight ever that night. I never had been in a fight before that, so I very well could have been standing right there. I don't have a fighting background.
Okay. But you saw the video.
Yes.
You'd agree you were moving.
I thought it was a really good point that he doesn't have a fighting background. He's like, I could have been standing right there doing nothing because I hadn't fought before. This was my first fight. So that's interesting. I thought it was a good point that he brought up. But he's going to talk about getting hit.
A little bit, yes.
Right. You weren't just standing there. And you told us that Mr. Valle comes out and he sucker punches you, right?
Yes.
He didn't tackle you.
No.
He didn't throw any more blows than that, correct?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
In fact, he moves away from you and gives more space after this interaction, right?
What interaction?
The interaction where you say he sucker punched you.
Yeah.
At that point, you come forward and you tackle Mr. Snyder, right?
Yes.
Get him down on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go off the screen, right? We can't see the rest of that as you guys are sort of behind a minivan. And at that point, people come in and they're trying to break it up, right?
No, not really.
No?
No.
Well, did you see Emily Robinson in that video coming in?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. Did you see any of the girls that were there coming in?
No.
Did you hear any of them?
No.
Fair to say your attention was focused on Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Valle, he had this helmet on, correct?
Yes.
And he had that helmet on the whole time, right?
No.
No, you believe he took that helmet off?
He did take that helmet off.
You believe he took that helmet off?
I see it in the video, yes.
In the video, you see him take the helmet off?
Yes.
And what is
What's interesting is I don't see him take the helmet off, and neither did the Emily girl. She was standing there and she said, no, he kept it on and he headbutted from the top. That's what it's always looked like to me. and he wasn't able to see what was going on. So I almost feel like, does he think he took the helmet off? It doesn't look like he took the helmet off. I think he's saying the defendant took the helmet off and then like beat him over the head with it. Regardless, the helmet bashed him in the head. So whether the defendant was holding it or had it on his head kind of makes no difference.
What does he do with it?
He smashes me in the back of the head with it.
And then what does he do with it?
Hits me again in the back of the head with it.
And then what does he do with it?
Not sure.
Does he put it back on?
I don't know.
So it's your testimony, sir, that he takes the helmet off of his head, swings it at you, and hits you with it twice.
Yes.
And then you're not sure if he puts it back on or not.
No, the video's over.
So that's something that's up for debate, but I don't think in the grand scheme of things it matters whether the defendant had it on his head, had it in his hands. He used it essentially as a weapon, and that will come back. Sorry, my voice is going. That will come back at another portion of this trial, that it is considered a weapon when you're using it like that to hurt someone. But let's continue. I wanted to show you another part because the defense is going to portray his actions as the aggressor, that he wanted to continue the fight, that he was antagonizing in the group chat.
And you told us yesterday that you weren't involved on that group chat, right?
No.
But then you told us today that, in fact, maybe you had sent a message, just one message, right?
Yes.
What was that message?
Saying that they were pussies for jumping me at the Lifer household.
And to come to 43 Laurel Glen Drive, right?
No.
You didn't send out the address?
No.
But somebody did, didn't they?
I believe so, yes.
On that group chat, right?
I would assume so, yes.
Well, you wouldn't assume so. You told us you were aware of that group chat. It was going off and it was buzzing in your pocket when you told us yesterday, right?
Yes.
And you would look at it from time to time and just say, oh, that's nothing. I'm not worried about that, right?
Yes.
Except today you told us, in fact, no, you had been involved. You would agree that's different than just looking at it and ignoring it, right?
This is before, like, I was at the Rich's house. I was not sending any text. This was all, like, before I even got picked up by Charlie.
Do you recall speaking to officers on May 15th at about noon when you were at St. Vincent's Hospital?
Slightly.
Officers.
He was in the hospital. You think that he's going to remember exactly what to tell officers when he's the victim? I mean, regardless of aggressor at this point, he is a victim of a stabbing. So I see where Mr. Smith is going to go with this, but I almost kind of discount people's, I'm putting air quotes, testimony when they're dealing with trauma, especially if it's physical trauma to your body with a collapsed lung.
Millington and Nugent came in and they talked to you while you were there, right?
Yes.
And you told them that your friends and you had reached out to the kids who jumped you and told them to come to Tyler Rich's house at 43 Laurel Glen Drive now that you had your friends with you, right?
I don't recall that, no.
You don't recall that?
No.
Do you generally, in your everyday speaking, say that you don't recall something?
Okay.
And he brought this up. Do you usually say the word like don't recall? As in, have you been coached by the prosecution? When in reality, I don't think it's coaching. I think it's just proper. And the attorney probably told him beforehand, you know what? If you don't remember anything, let's not complicate it. Let's not say things like, I don't remember, my memory's bad. Just say, I don't recall. It's kind of standard, but he kind of makes a thing out of it.
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
Do you recall speaking to detectives on June 9th around 3:30 with your parents at your home, Detectives Iannati and Bango?
Somewhat, yes.
Do you recall telling them that someone from the Shelton High School group texted the St. Joe's kids and challenged them to show up at 43 Laurel Glen Drive?
I do recall that, yes.
You do recall that?
Yes.
So again, it's not that you were just feeling your phone buzz and thinking, gosh, I don't want to pay attention to this. I don't have any idea what's going on. You were aware of what was happening, right?
No.
Well, how were you not aware of what was happening?
Because I wasn't reading the text messages. I just saw the notifications.
But you texted on that same group chat, right?
Hours previously.
hours previously.
Yeah.
Hours previously, you
That's interesting. So he's saying, yeah, I went in the group chat after they beat me up and I was like, hey, you P words, you shouldn't have jumped me. But he wasn't listening to what was transpiring inside there, in his words. And that was a couple hours before they end up at Tyler Rich's house where the incident occurred.
told these kids that they were pussies, correct?
Yes.
On this group chat,
Yes.
correct? What time was that?
Around like 8 or 9 o'clock.
We already know from previous testimony that it was Griffin who actually gave the address and said to like pull up or something like that. So it wasn't even Ryan. But was he antagonizing by saying like the P word, like shouldn't beat me up, whatever? But that was hours before. So I see where the defense is going with it, but it was actually his friend. Do we know what was going on, in real life aside from the group chat? Was him and his friend Griffin saying like, yeah, we should tell him to pull up? I don't know. But we're only going to be able to get from this witness what he actually did.
So at least around 8 or 9 o'clock, you knew that you could use that basketball group chat to text with these St. Joe's kids?
Yes.
Sir, would it surprise you if you learned that those kids weren't added to that group chat until after 5 Lazy Brook?
I'm not sure. What do you mean by that?
You're telling us that you texted these kids using this basketball group chat between 8 to 9 o'clock, right?
I believe so, yes.
Told them that they were pussies, right?
Yes.
But you didn't tell them to come to 43 Laurel Glen Drive because now you had your friends with you.
I did not tell them that, no.
You didn't tell them that.
I did not.
Or you don't recall telling
I
them
did
that.
not tell them that, no.
So essentially, when he texted, apparently, according to the evidence that the defense has, they're saying, oh, well, the St. Joe's kids that you wanted to call the P word weren't even in that group chat. But you know what? They got added because their friends knew who you were talking about. So they put them in the group chat. But then now they are in the group chat. So at this point, I'm sure Griffin knew because he was the one corresponding and they're together in the car and they're together hanging out in Natalia's house. So we can't know that for sure, but something transpired and they asked them to pull up. So I'm going to jump to another portion of the cross.
Right. And then you said, then it became aggressive, right?
Yes.
This is now at the other house. When the car pulled up, things were being thrown at the car. He admits to that, throwing cans and things at the car. And at first, it was cordial. Other people have said that as well. And then it got aggressive.
It didn't just get aggressive, right?
What do you mean by that?
Somebody did something for it to become aggressive, for it to change, right?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you see Tyler Rich reach inside the front driver's side window?
No.
Did you see Tyler Rich put his body halfway into the front driver's side window?
No.
Did you see Aiden King at the car?
No.
And then you told us that cans started getting thrown at the car, right?
Yes.
Again, sir, they didn't just start getting thrown, right?
Yes.
No. Somebody threw something, right?
They threw a can, yes.
Yes. It didn't just start from nothing, right?
I don't know.
Well, you've described it as cans just started getting thrown at the car.
From what I was aware of, yes, that's what had happened.
But then you told us that you threw a can at the car.
Yes, I did.
So it didn't just start getting thrown, you threw a can at the car.
I didn't start throwing the cans.
Okay, you joined in of the throwing of the cans.
Yes, I did.
You would agree that it was other people, not some anonymous entity that was throwing cans at the vehicle, right?
Yes.
And those people that were throwing cans at the vehicle were aggressive. Would you agree?
They were aggressive, you said?
Yes.
Sure.
That's an aggressive act, right?
Yeah.
What would you expect the response to be to a can being thrown?
I'm going to object that close, please.
Sustained.
People that don't know, we call him Mr. Depp. Okay. His name is Mr. Smith. We call him Mr. Depp. And Sienna says he's a little sassier than he should be. Oh, it gets way worse. Like there were points where I was actually yelling through the screen. This was like in another day of the trial. I was like yelling at the screen. I was like, sir, what? Like, I understand he has a job to do, so I'm going to let it slide. But yeah, they weren't just coming from the sky, sir. Somebody was throwing them. I think that's what Ryan and everybody else meant, that they were being thrown. But it was dark. Maybe they don't know who in particular was throwing them. But the whole point of this cross, and we don't need to go too far into it because we have more to get to, is to show that he was the aggressor. He was the one that taunted them through the group text, provoking them outside by pulling the defendant's shirt up over his head. That was something that he talked about. And then provoking them when they were out on the grass. So I think those are the most important takeaways from this testimony. The prosecution did come back briefly just to clarify a couple things. Ryan's minimal involvement in the group chat after the initial confrontation. And then he also reconfirmed Ryan's claim that he saw no weapon prior to the stabbing. And I think we get the picture. But of course, to really understand the gravity of Ryan's injuries, we have to listen to Dr. Ryan Doss. He is an ER physician. He was there to testify about the severity of Ryan's injuries. He treated Mr. Ryan Hines. And the doctor testifies that Ryan arrived at the emergency room, I think around midnight, multiple stab wounds, including one to the chest that did cause his left lung to collapse. He had a broken nose and other injuries that were new, despite the defense trying to claim he already had a broken nose. Like that was an old injury. No, it was actually done that night. So that was important. So I'm just going to pull one clip from the doctor's testimony. I don't think we have to hear the entire testimony, but I think this is important.
Knowledge, how was Ryan Hines brought to the hospital?
By ambulance.
And explain to the members of the jury, do you get indication from EMS when a patient's being brought in? Is there an alert system that's put into effect?
Yes, they don't necessarily call ahead about every patient, but for potentially serious conditions, they will call ahead on the radio. We get a heads up that they're arriving. They give us a brief description of the situation so that we can prepare.
And can you please explain to the members of the jury how the patient, Mr. Hines, presented upon his arrival?
He presented, brought in by ambulance. He was awake and alert, but uncomfortable, and they had called ahead saying that he had a penetrating wound to the left chest and left leg.
So you knew at that point how many wounds there were?
We knew of at least two, I think 3 wounds. I think it was the chest and flank and leg. Yes, we knew it.
And do you recall where you specifically observed those wounds?
I observed them in the trauma room upon the patient's arrival.
And prior to that morning, had you had occasion to tend to patients who had suffered from stab wounds?
Yes.
And based on your training experience, were Ryan Hines' injuries consistent with stab wounds?
Yes.
Did you observe did you base your conclusions on self-reporting, or did you base that on your own personal observations, or both?
My own personal observations, I suppose.
Did Mr. Hines indicate to you, or do you recall if he indicated that he had been stabbed prior to?
We had been informed ahead of time by EMS that he had. I don't actually recall if I directly asked him that question.
But you had knowledge that he was.
I think it was kind of obvious he was stabbed, but I know this came up because the defense brought up something that, oh, well, they were reporting they got stabbed. Sure, but it was also clear they were stab wounds, but he also tried to say, well, could it be glass? Could it be this, that? But we already know it's a knife. We can just flat out say, it was a knife. We get to see the knife going forward. It was a knife.
Was.
Yes.
Were you aware of the apparatus or what was used to stab him?
I did not know the details of the implement. We were told it was a knife, but I didn't know anything about the size or length of the knife.
Prior to you seeing a patient, is it typical for the nurses to have contact or make contact with the patient?
Depending on the situation. In this case, everyone kind of met the patient at the same time, but oftentimes the nurses do initially evaluate the patient before the doctors do.
And why in this situation was it everyone hands on deck when the patient came immediately versus the patient going with the nurses, getting assessed? Explain why that was done in this case.
Because for this type of injury, our concern is that it may be immediately life-threatening, and we need to intervene right away.
So there you go. This doctor is explaining that he sees puncture wounds. A lung has collapsed. It can be life-threatening. There's pressure in the chest that can impair the heart if that pressure is not relieved. So he's going to go on. We're not going to hear this whole thing because we don't need to hear it, but I'm telling you, he details the life-saving measures that they use. They inserted a chest tube. We saw it in a picture that I had to blur. They reinflated his lung. They drained internal bleeding that was happening. And he confirmed that Ryan's wounds were serious and potentially fatal. So somebody else could have died that night if they didn't get medical intervention, especially the chest and the abdomen stab wounds. They could have hit vital organs, according to him. And he also noted that, because this is going to come up again, Ryan's blood alcohol level was very low, and it did not complicate the treatment or contribute to anything. It's bound to come up because the defense, who, by the way, I disliked, like I said, as it progressed, but Mr. Depp, Mr. Smith in real life, I know you're doing the best you can, but sometimes your questioning makes my blood boil. But then finally, we do hear from the first one of the defendant's friends, because y'all been asking, are the defendant's friends going to... Yes. And they're testifying so far for the prosecution. I'm not going to give too much away because some of you haven't watched forward, okay? So I don't want to tell you what is going to happen, what isn't going to happen, because I want it to just flow as naturally as possible. I know we're behind. Let's move on here. This is going to be, and there's so many, Keenan Frazic. Don't quote me on his last name. His name is Keenan, though. This is one of the individuals that was inside the SUV. He's also from St. Joseph's High School. He's a classmate of the defendants. He was in the Honda Pilot that night. He was thinking they were going home. But he paints this picture of a very violent, volatile scene when they arrived at Tyler Rich's house on Laurel Glen Drive. He said there were at least 20 to 30 teens. Many were football players that just swarmed around the SUV. They were banging on it. They were throwing things. They were spitting and even bouncing on the bumper. We've already heard this. Tensions were high. And this is the same as everything. There wasn't that many different things, but there is something new. And that's where I'm going to jump to.
Yes.
Can you please explain what that interaction is like?
So the interaction was, first of all, it was agitated. The scene was tense. Lito was searching for a weapon in the car. He said, "Jack, where is your knife? Where the F is your knife?"
Wow. So I just had to stop it there. Where is your knife? Where the F is your knife? This is the first time we have actually gotten concrete, eyewitness testimony. Thank you, Julia. Hi, Julia. That is his last name. Thank you for that. It's a lot of names to remember, and a lot of them are spelled not like they sound. But he's the first to actually tell us about this knife and that he heard the defendant asking Jack for a knife. So let's just replay that.
Yes.
Can you please explain what that interaction is like?
So the interaction was, first of all, it was agitated. The scene was tense. Lito was searching for a weapon in the car. He said, "Jack, where is your knife? Where the F is your knife?" And he was looking around in the glove box and the center console and did not find anything.
I'm sorry?
I did not see a knife.
How was the defendant reacting prior to looking for the knife?
He was on edge
Why was he on edge?
because he was upset from what happened to Jack's car.
And what kind of things was he saying to make you feel like he was upset? How was he acting?
It's going pretty insane. I'd say he was using vulgar language, cussing. Jack, look what the F they did to your car.
And after he said, "Look what the F that they did to your car," that's when he asked Jack, "Where's the knife?"
Yes.
How long would you say that was going on for down the street?
That they were searching?
Well, that the defendant was acting in an aggressive manner and cursing and going insane because of what happened to the car, and then looking for the knife.
No more than 30 seconds.
I have to stop it because I'm just thinking, and whenever I think, I'm like, I need to say this. These kids, they're young. They're impressionable. I'm not making excuses, but my brain's just working. The defendant was so upset about his friend's car. It's not even his car. He's furious about the damage to Jack's vehicle. So much so, he's on edge, he's becoming aggressive, and now he's searching for a weapon inside this vehicle. He's rifling through the glove box and the console.
You indicated that you did not see a knife.
I did not.
Do you know whether or not the defendant ended up finding a knife?
After the fact,
Right, but at the moment,
I assume he found a knife, but in the moment, did not see a knife and believe for the rest of the night that he never found a knife because I never saw one.
Now, when you say that the three of them went back down the street, before they go back down the street, was there any talk about going back down the street by the defendant?
Yes.
What was he saying?
I don't remember the exact words they were saying, but there was conversation. I was too far away to hear the exact words, and they got back in and drove down.
I love how all of them have like the 80s mustache. I paused in a
Now-
bad area. Mustache and hairstyles. I mean, they have definitely come back, and I'm just loving the full hairstyle, the mustaches. It's just interesting to see how these styles come back because all their hairs are like back to the 80s and 90s. But this is serious, and I know we now know he's rifling through, he's looking for a weapon before they get to the grass. He's cursing. At this point, Keenan doesn't know exactly what's happening, what he's saying, but he can tell he's saying, like, where the F is your knife? And this was very dramatic testimony. This is a key witness for the prosecution. This suggests that the defendant had armed himself before any physical attack happened on him. So that would undermine a pure self-defense claim. Because a pure self-defense claim would be, I'm being bombarded by people, I am scared, I'm being surrounded, I feel threatened, so I pulled out a knife in self-defense. But the fact that he already armed himself. And then Keenan said he did actually see the stabbing. He was in the car during the fight, but he described hearing shouting, screaming, and others were exiting the SUV, and he remembered a very, very high-pitched scream. And that's the moment the brawl turned fatal. And soon after, Tyler De Silva, another friend of his, who was part of the first fight, he stumbled back into the car and he was severely beaten. And he actually said almost unconscious. So what's interesting about this is we talked about the whole defense of others. And Tyler De Silva is one of the defendant's friends, close friends. Is there some kind of world where the defendant felt in fear for his friend's life? He gets a knife. We're going to hear that later, but let's go to that moment.
The yelling and then high-pitched screaming. Did you witness the car return?
Yes.
And when the car returned, were you able to witness what Tyler De Silva looked like?
Yes.
And what did he look like?
He was bleeding a lot, bruised everywhere. I asked him a simple question, and I didn't really get an answer, so he was just about unconscious.
And were you able to witness what the defendant looked like?
Yes.
And how did the defendant appear to you?
Shocked. He had like a shocked look on his face. Didn't look as battered as Tyler De Silva was, nowhere near.
That was important because the defendant also returned looking shocked and disheveled, but not nearly as injured as Tyler De Silva. He looked like he was in a fight, but he was not badly hurt so much that it would signify he had a reason to use fatal force on someone, a weapon. He wasn't beaten to the point where you would expect him to need to use that kind of force. But to be fair, self-defense is all about what the person who used the force felt at the time and whether that was reasonable. So we're going to get there because I don't want to spoil anything, but I think you probably already know from the picture I put on here, we are going to hear from the defendant at some point about what he was feeling, thinking, because that's in a self-defense case, you usually do have to take the stand. And we talked about that. We were like, is he going to? And I was like, he's probably going to have to. But on cross-examination, Smith pressed Keenan about all these details, but he held firm that the defendant had been urgently looking for a knife prior to that fight. And even added that Tyler De Silva had even tried to talk the defendant out of going back down the street and confronting the group. But guess what? The defendant didn't want to listen. And I'm laughing at y'all's chat, and not because I think anything in this case is funny. For anyone who's watching and doesn't know why I'm smirking, that's because I'm reading our chat. Our chat, you are all witty and funny, and that's fine. And I appreciate that a lot. I just don't want anyone new here to think we're like insensitive and cruel when we're not. It's just sometimes humor is how we get through things. Okay, let's listen to this part.
It's on the curb.
Did you ever get up and move around to get closer to see what was going on down there?
When they went back,
No, when this was going on, what you've described down as the intersection with the Shelton High kids and the...
I can't recall. I believe we were on the curb.
You think you were just sitting on the curb?
Yes.
And then you said you heard Mr. Valle say to Jack Snyder, "Where's your knife? Where the fuck is your knife?" Right?
That did happen.
That's the only thing that you heard while you were seeing this interaction go on, that you told us you could not see or hear what else was going on?
No, you didn't ask me when I heard about the knife.
Okay.
It was, I can't put an exact time frame on it, but it was when I was either in the car, just outside the car, but it happened before the three of them went back, and it happened after the 7 of us arrived initially on Laurel Glen.
Sometime between the time that you first got there and were surrounded
Yes.
and the time that they went back to the house,
Yes.
that's as close as you can tell us when you claim to have heard this.
Yes.
Good point, Anna.
So you could have been in the vehicle when you heard this, or you could have been on the curb when you heard this.
I don't think I was on the curb because I saw with my eyes he was looking in the glove compartment and the center console.
Mr. Valle was seated in the back seat?
I don't know.
Well, sir, who was driving the car?
Jack Snyder.
And Tyler DeSilva was the front passenger, was he not?
He could have been. I don't remember.
But if Lido Valle was seated in the back seat, your recollection is that he was in the glove box looking for a knife.
If he happened to be in the back seat, I think it's within an arm's reach the center console in the glove compartment. But I do not know if he was in the shotgun seat or in the back.
This Honda Pilot, do you recall it being, the interior being somehow different than the typical car where the glove box is right in front of the passenger?
Sir, have you ever leaned? Have you ever leaned in a car? Like, Depp, you're going too far in this. Like, you can move around. You can lean. You can put a knee on the console. You can go forward into the front seat. You can... These are not small children. I mean, they're teens, but they're athletic. They can move. They're not unable to resituate themselves to position them in a way to reach inside the center console.
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Was there something different about this Honda Pilot that the glove box was not directly in front of the passenger?
I don't believe so. I believe it was a normal car.
But your recollection is that Mr. Valle was able to reach into the glove box and was tearing the whole place apart trying to get it.
The glove box and the center console were being rummaged through.
And you said that he was on edge and he was looking for the knife because he was upset from what happened to Jack Snyder's car, right?
I don't know exactly why he was looking for it, but he was searching for it.
Well, you told us he was in the glove box, he was on edge, he was upset from what had happened to Jack Snyder's car.
He was
remember telling us
upset.
that?
He was upset.
Right. So this must have occurred after you had already gotten there and the car had been surrounded, right?
Sounds right.
Okay. So did it happen as the car was driving from in front of 43 Laurel Glen to down where you got out of the vehicle?
Sounds about right.
Okay, so now you can tell us. Oh, actually, you know what? That is what happened. It was while we drove from 43 Laurel Glen down to 36.
Everything's happening so fast. And when you start hearing from more witnesses, especially, I don't want to give anything away, a witness I'm going to be talking about tomorrow, it is going to become very clear. But not everyone has the same vantage point. Not everyone is watching the same thing. Not everyone is going to remember everything the same way. But when you put it all together, you're going to get a very clear picture.
No, that's you narrowing it down, and it sounds right.
It sounds right. Are you just agreeing with me to agree with me, or do you have
No,
recollection?
he wouldn't be rummaging through a glove box if there was nothing going on. Like when we were just approaching, he would not be rummaging through a glove box.
Do you recall the vehicle moving while he was, as you put it, rummaging through the glove box?
Cannot recall.
Do you recall him leaning up into the glove box area?
I cannot recall.
But you recall him being in the glove box?
The glove box was opened, and the center console was opened.
You saw those things happen?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Snyder pull the knife out of the console?
No.
Did you ever see Mr. Snyder with the knife?
No, I never saw a knife.
You never saw the knife?
Never saw a knife.
So the defense really seized on the fact that Keenan didn't see an actual knife either in the driver, Jack Snyder's hands, or the defendant, Raul Valle's hands. He heard the defendant ask for one, but he didn't see it. But his impression was that he was gearing up for violence, because why else would you be looking for a knife, rummaging through the center console, asking your friend for his knife? It's pretty clear at this point to me, if I was a juror, okay, he definitely armed himself before, but we need to hear more. So the second friend came forward. This is Dimitri. Okay, you're going to, Arfanis? Tell me if I'm right or wrong. He's also a friend that was inside the SUV, and he corroborated much of what Keenan just said. He testified that after the SUV was attacked by the crowd, the defendant was enraged. He was angry. He was aggressive, especially when he saw the car getting damaged. And I just feel like asking him, why? Why did that matter so much to you? So much that you would think that, and maybe he had the wrong impression that you're allowed to, I'm not making excuses, I'm just trying to get into the mind of someone who did this. Maybe he was under the impression that you can use force to defend against someone that harmed an expensive car. Because to a teenager, a car is a big deal. I remember when I was 16, a car was, oh my gosh, to afford a car, right? And it still is, especially now. But he could have been under the impression that, look what he did. I have a reason to arm myself. But you're going to hear otherwise. I think it's a little skewed if we think that way, but I'm just trying to justify that part. But now we are going to hear about what happened next from someone else's point of view. This is Dimitri.
When did that happen in relation to looking at the car?
That, like, right when he saw the car.
And how was the defendant reacting when he was inspecting the car?
Pretty upset.
How upset? Describe it to me.
He, was, yelling.
What was he yelling?
I don't remember the exact words.
Was he cursing?
I don't remember.
Did he act like he was peaceful?
No.
Did he act more upset than Jack and Tyler?
Yes, in the moment.
Based on the way the defendant was reacting, did it appear that how did it appear? Did he want to go and talk to those kids?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Did the defendant say anything with regards to wanting to go back and talk to those kids?
Yeah.
What did he say?
I don't remember the exact words, but it was like, let's go back.
And did it appear that he was acting in an aggressive manner?
Yes.
How did he appear? How was he acting?
He was mad. He was, yelling and stuff. I don't remember the exact words that he was saying.
Remember not to, because I know it's frustrating, this is a teenager at the time. I forget how old he is right now, but he might be 19. It's hard. Not only are you in a room full of people staring right at you and listening to every word you're saying, but it's televised. But he's talking about the fact he heard yelling. He was aggressive.
And at what point did he ask for the knife?
Right after we went out the car and inspected it, the damage.
Do you recall who he asked for the knife?
I think it was Jack.
And do you recall whether or not...
Also, the court reporter has really nice hair as well. We only get a glimpse of him as we come and pan out and then come back in. He has very nice hair.
a knife was given to him or found?
No.
Did you ever see a knife that night?
No.
After the defendant asked for the knife, how long was this inspection and asking for the knife going on for?
A few minutes.
A few minutes? At some point in time after the defendant asks for the knife, what happens after that?
The defendant, Jack, and Tyler get back in the car and drive back down to the house.
And at this point in time, it's just the three of them in the car?
Yes.
So where are you, Will, Keenan, and Mackenzie?
We're still on the side of the curb by the other house I just pointed out.
So are you on the curb? So my point to the state's one here.
So I'm going to kind of recap this. According to this witness, the defendant demanded that the driver, Jack Snyder, his friend, hand him a knife just before the defendant and two other people, Tyler De Silva, who we know came back very beaten and battered, and Jack Snyder, the driver, decided to drive towards the house and confront the group of kids for the second time. And Dimitri didn't want to do that. He didn't want to join the fight, so he stayed behind. He said, I didn't want to be involved. He had no stake in this dispute. He didn't even want to be there. Him and his friends thought that they were being taken home, and then they end up at this fight, which I think was on purpose, because I think the guys who did intend to go there, they brought along a few friends who they were supposed to be taking home, but they thought, look, we're rolling up with 7 people. At least we're going to look like it's more than 1 or 2 or 3. Possibly, I'm speculating. But a few minutes later, the Honda pilot returned and Dimitri testified that Tyler De Silva came back covered in blood and barely conscious, just like Keenan said. Whereas the defendant appeared relatively unscathed. He was fine, with no obvious serious injuries to be had. So let's listen to that.
Here, this has been previously identified as 36 Laurel Glen. Are you on the side of the curb here somewhere? Or are you on this side of the road? Do you recall what side of the road you're on?
We're on this side of the road, like around here.
Okay. And you waited there?
Yes.
Why did you wait there?
Because I don't want to go back.
Why didn't you want to go back?
Because I don't want to get in a fight with these kids that I don't know.
So, at some point in time, the car leaves.
Yes.
Do you hear what goes on down the other end of the street?
All I heard was some people screaming.
Pretty scary to hear people putting the closed captioning up. Pretty scary to just be sitting out there and knowing something is going on and you're just hearing screaming.
And how long do you think the car was down the other end of the street?
Not that long, like 5 minutes.
And when we're talking about the other end of the street, are we talking about going back towards 43 Laurel Glen, or are we talking going the other way when you say go down the street?
They go back down to the house that we're at.
So,
Imagine this was your kid up there. So unbelievable. I haven't seen people this young testify in a long time.
so this states 49. They go back to this house.
Yes.
Did you see the car stop in front of the house from where you were seated?
No.
How do you know that they were down there?
I assume so.
Okay. And they were down there for 5 minutes, you said? And you heard screaming?
Yes.
Now, when you were waiting down the other end near Farmhouse Road or down the other end of Laurel Glen, did you have a ride home at that point?
No.
Did you have an idea of how you were going to get home at that point?
No.
At some point in time, after 5 minutes passes, does the car return?
Yes.
And when the car returns, tell me about that. What happens?
The car returned and we didn't have a ride and we were about to get back in the car to leave. And I see Tyler all beat up and bloody. He could like barely form words. And at the same moment, Mackenzie, she'd called her sister previously and her sister drove up and Mackenzie told us to get in her car.
So did you get in Mackenzie's car?
Yes.
And when
Mackenzie, just so you know, we're going to be hearing from her later. She was the defendant's current girlfriend at the time.
who else got in Mackenzie's car?
At first, only me and Keenan, and then Lito also got in the car.
And when Lito got in the car, did you have an opportunity to observe him?
Not really, no.
And on the ride home, who got dropped off first?
Me and Keenan.
Okay, this part isn't relevant in the grand scheme of things right here, but, you know, it just seems still that the defendant hadn't been the one that was beat up the worst, according to his friends. You know, it was Tyler that had the worst beating. And that was really the point the prosecution was trying to make here, that the stabbing of these 4 people was not like a last resort necessity for survival for the defendant, who wasn't even beaten as badly as other people. And this testimony just reinforced that the defendant was seeking a weapon before the fatal confrontation happened. But of course, we have to hear cross-examination. And under defense questioning, Dimitri was consistent. He knew his story. It was the truth. He admitted he never actually saw a knife in the defendant's hand, but he definitely heard the defendant ask for one. And he saw his aggressive demeanor. And this again supports the prosecution's narrative that the defendant armed himself in anticipation of violence. I think I do have a clip of that, but I just wanted to go forward and explain.
And you said that you saw Mr. De Silva, Mr. Snyder, and Mr. Valle inspecting the car.
We all were, not just them. Like me, Keenan, and Will too.
So you got up off of the curb and went over to look at the car?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you are not just sitting on the curb with Mr. Frasick and Ms. Traficante and Mr. Sensual. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
You actually got up and went over to the car with those two folks.
Yeah, and we checked it out.
Okay. And you saw some dents and some scratches.
Yeah.
And you claim you heard Mr. Valle ask for a knife.
He did, yeah.
Where were you standing when that happened?
Near the rear of the car.
Near the rear of the car. Where was Mr. Valle when that happened?
Also, like, in the same area.
Near the rear of the car.
Yeah.
Where was Mr. Frasick when that happened?
Next to me.
Next to you.
Yeah.
And where was Mr. Sensual?
Also next to me.
Okay. And then you saw Mr. Valle go tearing through the glove box, right?
I never saw that, no.
You saw him go tearing through the console, right?
I never saw that, no.
You didn't see Mr. Valle go tearing through the glove box and the console?
I did
Objection.
not.
Looking for a knife?
Sustained.
This was interesting because he's putting them kind of in different spots. He's saying, no, we were in the back. We were all standing back there. He was asking for a knife. Didn't see him rummaging through everything. But remember, and Bree made up a really good point in the chat, people are having a different point of view. If all of us sat in a room and something was going on and we didn't know we were going to have to remember it for later, I might be preoccupied with something over here. I might be looking down at my phone at one point when you're looking up. So there's definitely going to be different perspectives, but we have to, as the 13th juror, put all those perspectives together in the end. And that's what's important. Let me jump ahead, I think. Yeah.
But you claim that you heard Mr. Valle asking for a knife.
Yes.
And who was he asking for a knife?
Jack.
Did you see Jack Snyder with a knife?
I did not.
Nothing further. Thank you.
So this was just another example of another witness that's saying that the defendant was at least asking for a knife. This was after the car incident, but before the fight on the lawn. And that seems like intent. Because nothing has happened yet. I mean, yes, the car incident happened, but now it's died down and it's essentially over. And guess what? We're moving on to day 6. That was day 5. Believe it or not, we got through it. That was day 5. So for day 6, there was a bombshell because Jack Snyder himself took the stand. And at first, it was outside the presence of the jury. And why? Because he had a deal, an immunity agreement. Because remember, Jack, I wouldn't say he's so innocent in all this, right? There were a lot of things that happened with him. At the first house, he was the one taking the beer, getting in a physical fight with Ryan Hines. He was the one that was sort of antagonizing the whole thing to begin with. So you could say, if it wasn't for him, this would have never happened. But there was an intervening situation that happened. It's called everyone dispersed and went home. There was no reason this had to start up again. But he consulted with an attorney early on. His parents and him and the attorneys decided not to speak. And this was his chance to finally openly, outside of the jury, of course, talk about what he saw that night before the jury came back in so that both the prosecution and the defense could hear all that. The prosecution already knows. He is being called for the prosecution. But recall, he was the driver that night, a friend of the defendant. But Jack was a crucial witness because he admitted to actually supplying the knife that was used in the stabbing. And that's why he needed immunity. He testified under this immunity deal, meaning that he could not be prosecuted for any role that he played, potentially as, let's say, an accessory, and in exchange for telling the truth. Well, the defense definitely wanted to use that to their advantage, saying, well, then who decides if you're telling the truth? Oh, the prosecution. Well, what does that mean? Well, you're going to say what they want to hear. But I want to give Jack a little credit. He's very firm. He says, no, I'm adamant. I'm just going to tell you what happened that night. I'm going to tell you the truth of what happened that night. And I could not wait to hear his testimony. It's actually really interesting to me. And yes, I am going to make an interesting emoji. It's on my list. But when the jury came back in, Jack was now on the stand for about 2 hours. And he gave a very detailed, candid account of that night. One that both implicates the defendant in this intentional stabbing, the way that it's illustrated, and this violent, fear-inducing atmosphere that they were put in. He testified the defendant demanded his knife after the first run-in. He said, "Where's the knife? Give me the knife." That's what he recalled.
When he was acting in this way, what, if anything, happened during this inspection of your car?
He came back around and asked.
By the way, nothing I could do about the audio. It is so bad. Let me put the closed captioning up here. Claptioning.
Knife.
And when you say the knife, what do you mean?
I carried a pocket knife in the bottom of my center console, and it's always been there from when I got the car initially.
Why was it there?
Just any really reason I would need a knife, it was there, to cut anything. Whatever, just at the bottom of my center console. A bunch of random items were along with it, but I knew it was there.
He's trying to say he had this knife in the center console for his own safety, convenience. It was just there. It was there before. It's not something they brought along that night. When they came there, it was something that was in his car.
And when they initially surrounded my car, I had taken it out and put it on my waist.
So you're talking about down in front of 43 Laurel Glen when your car started to get...
When they were rocking the car.
You took the knife out and put it on your waist?
Put it on my waist.
But that's interesting. When they were rocking the car and things were happening, he did take out the knife and put it in his waist, like on his waistband.
When you put it on your waist, did you open it up?
No.
Did you show it to anybody? And when you did that, why did you do that?
Just because I didn't expect so many people there, and after seeing what they were doing in my car and how they were talking, I just felt like it was in regard to my own safety. I just took it out and put it down just in case anything were to happen.
Now, after you left that initial interaction where you say you took the knife out and you put it on your lap and you went down the street, could you have just left the area and not gone back?
Could have.
But you didn't do that, right? And you say that the defendant asked you for the knife. Tell me what kinds of things was he saying?
He just said, "Where's the knife?"
So even asked, could you guys have just left? They could have, but they didn't.
The knife's along those lines.
Did he say it in an aggressive manner?
Not really. He just kind of asked for it.
How did he know? How did the defendant know that Jack had a knife? I mean, I'm assuming he's been in his car before. I'm assuming, and we'll probably hear about this later, that it has been in there.
Approach the witness, Your Honor.
Hi, Roderick. Welcome.
Jack, I'm showing you what's marked as State's Exhibit 95 for identification purposes. You recognize State's 95.
I do.
And what is State's 95?
A copy of the knife.
Is this a picture of the knife that you...
This is the first time we actually saw the knife, and I was like, oh, okay. Makes a lot more sense now.
You sent me that is a duplicate of what the knife looked like from May 14th, 2022.
Don't worry. They're just asking him if it's the
Is
knife.
this a fair and accurate depiction of what the knife looked like that you possessed that before?
It is.
I would offer this as a full exhibit.
Attorney Smith?
No objection.
All right, court will accept an evidence, states 95, full exhibit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I will say they're pretty organized in this courtroom.
Showing you State's 95, It's now been marked as a full exhibit. Is this the knife that you had on in your vehicle on May 14th of 2022?
Remember in the beginning when there was a question about the color of the blade? That's why. Because I guess the blade was black. Because someone said, I think it was actually Mr. Smith was like, oh, did you see what color it was? And one of you in the chat was like, why does that matter? Isn't it just going to be silver? And I was like, maybe not. But my theory at the time was, okay, maybe it was glass. Maybe it was something on the ground. This is before we knew that a knife was actually involved. So there you go. A folding knife, a black folding knife that Jack kept in his SUV center console.
Is this the knife that that the defendant was looking for on May 14th of 2022?
Yes.
You indicated that you had this in your center console. I'm going to show you states 32. Picture of the inside of your car. And when you say your center console, are you indicating that this area here, or are you indicating the glove box?
I'm going to move the closed captioning. So looking at this, we're getting a pretty clear view of what I would assume is the center console, which is in the center of your car, and then the glove compartment, which is near the air conditioning in front of the passenger side.
No, the center console.
So I'm pointing to the left of states 32, the center console area of the car.
Yep.
And you had taken it out of this area and put it on your lap when you initially got to 43 Laurel Glen. And when the defendant asked for the knife on May 14th of 22, tell us about what happened. Did you give it to him? What happened? You gave him the knife?
So Jake had a good question, and I thought I would talk about it since we are on the subject. Do you agree with Snyder and De Silva receiving immunity and waiting 6 months to talk to the police after the incident? Is this common? It is common because usually when you do retain counsel, which would be the smartest move, and I'm guessing that their parents knew they needed to get attorneys right away because it was a fatal situation, your attorney is going to tell you not to speak. It doesn't necessarily mean that no statements were made, because the attorneys could have spoken on their behalf, which I'm assuming did happen. But were they ready to talk to the police? No, probably not, because they did want to work out a deal because the state needs information. They don't want to go to jail. So immunity deals, they are pretty common, especially when you're lacking evidence and they were the defendant's friends. So usually those are the type of people that would be given immunity because they know more about what happened since they were close enough to the defendant to know what was transpiring. And they're not usually going to want to come forward on the prosecution's behalf, right? Without knowing that they are safe from the prosecution coming after them. So it is pretty common, and I wouldn't necessarily say I have a problem with it. The law is the law, and if that state you are allowed to do things the way they were, I would say that if it was in the bounds of the law and acceptable for the prosecution and they believe they needed it, then I believe in it. It's all about what the prosecution needs at that point, and I think at this point, they were so in the dark. And look what's coming forward. These were the individuals essentially that saw what was going on, were involved, played a role. Now, do I think in those situations it's fair that they don't get a punishment? Not always. I don't always think that's fair, but they are making a deal. In exchange for the truth, they aren't going to get prosecuted. As long as they tell the truth, though. And that was part of this that we are going to hear a little bit about.
And when you gave him the knife, why did you do that?
I wasn't really thinking. I just gave it to him. He asked for it. I gave it to him.
So he wasn't really thinking. And he handed over his own black folding knife. And he handed it to the defendant. But he had pulled this knife out earlier and kept it in his lap because he was scared, according to him, when those kids surrounded and were attacking his Honda Pilot. The windows were being hit. He said that a chemical like WD-40 was shot at them through the window, and supposedly that caused him to panic. Jack said, I wasn't really thinking. The defendant asked for it. I gave it to him. And essentially, he armed the defendant, and that's why he needed the immunity, right? And then his testimony just walked the jurors through to the confrontations that night. He confirmed the earlier fight at Lazy Brook Road, and that had set the stage for the fight that ends up happening later. It all started when he stole the beer from Ryan Hines. He was the one that sparked that brawl, and after that scuffle, both groups of friends exchanged those heated words over text. And Jack revealed there was a really hostile group chat that was going on. We've heard some of it, right? But it was like toxic trash talking, according to him, between St. Joseph's kids and Shelton kids. And plans were made that they were going to have a second confrontation. So let's get into that, because I do think I have a clip of this, but it's sort of what we already heard. He's just reiterating it and giving a lot more detail about what happened.
Okay, and at some point in time, did Tyler come back to the car?
He came in after Ludo. Ludo got in the passenger seat and first, and he was like all distraught and said something along the lines of like, I think I just stabbed like 4 people or something.
This is when the defendant came back, so I just want to check this really quick.
Now, is there any conversation between you or anybody else just slightly before or after you give the defendant the knife?
Yeah, before.
And what are you guys talking about?
Tyler, maybe Ludo, I think they knew people at the party. I didn't, but they wanted to go back because maybe they recognized a couple kids and they were going to go try and talk to him, calm it down, maybe just make peace with him. That's the whole plan.
And did you in fact get in your car?
We did.
Who got in your car?
I got in the driver's seat, and Lito got in the passenger and Tyler in the back.
And did anybody else get in the car at that point in time?
No.
And when you got in the car, where did you go?
We drove up towards the lawn.
When you say
Right to the right of the...
And when you stopped there, what happened when you stopped there?
Tyler and Lito got out.
And where did they go?
They started walking towards the crowd of people that was on the lawn.
And
So he's talking, I know the audio is terrible. He's talking about how they got back in the car, they drove up to the lawn where the kids were standing, and then Tyler and the defendant get out while Jack is still in the car.
when they did that, what did you do?
I was at my window down and I was kind of watching them, just making sure they were okay.
And did you stay in that area?
I stayed right parallel to them the whole time.
Did you move the car up a little bit?
I crept up as they walked up.
And when you walked up, were you able to observe the interaction between Tyler and the defendant and the group from 43 Laurel Glen?
It was dark out, but I could see what was going on.
Now, prior to getting there, were you ever under the impression that were you told to leave and get out of here? Do you recall that?
I can't recall that.
Okay.
That was different from what we heard because there's been so many prosecution witnesses that said that these are friends of the Shelton kids and the Shelton kids. They were telling them to leave. We told them to leave. And Jack Snyder's like, no, I wasn't told to leave, or I didn't hear that, or I don't recall.
Okay. Now, when Tyler and the defendant get out of the car and they're on the property here, they're on the property. What kinds of things was there any verbal interaction between the defendant and Tyler and the people from 43 Laurel Glen?
Yeah, they were conversing, but it didn't sound aggressive at first.
Show you states 4. Do you recall where your car was in states 4 when you noticed that they were conversing?
Like a little bit in between the bushes, maybe.
Would it be over here somewhere?
Yeah, middle of the street.
Middle of the street? Were there cars parked on the side of the street?
Yeah.
So you couldn't be near the curb, per se?
Well, I was kind of in the middle of the street just watching.
Okay. And you were in the driver's seat, car was on, you were looking over your shoulder?
Yep.
Through the window? Window was up?
It was down. It was down.
It was down? And you said that you heard talking back and forth?
Yeah.
It was normal at first? And how long would you say it was normal for?
10, 20 seconds.
And then at some point in time, did it escalate?
It did.
And can you tell us about that?
Someone came out from the crowd and punched Lito in the face.
And when that happened, what did you observe?
Just all out chaos at that point.
Did you observe where the defendant was after he got punched? Did you observe where Tyler was after that happened?
The audio's so bad that when he's answering, you can't even hear his answer. And I have to like look at his lips, and his lips aren't even moving because the video quality is so bad. So it's like both bad all the way. And that's why I keep reiterating what he's saying.
At some point in time, do you stay in that area right as the fight's going on?
All the time.
And at some point during the fight, does anybody come back to your car?
Yeah, initially.
And when he comes back to your car, does he get in the car?
No. I think he opened the door.
Okay.
He came up to the door.
And after he opened the door, what, if anything, did you observe him do next?
He just went back.
And when he went back, at some point in time, how long did he, from the time he left your car to go back, did he come back to the car at some point?
He came back, went back, and then came back. Oh, yes.
How long did that take, do you think?
10, 15 seconds.
So this was a very fast altercation. They were coming back to the car. And then I already played this when I played over. When
Okay,
Tyler
and at
comes
some point in
back,
time-
when Tyler comes back, this is what Jack observed him looking like.
Okay.
Try to listen carefully because it's really low.
And at some point in time, did Tyler come back to the car?
He came in after Ludo. Ludo got in the passenger seat and first, and he was like all distraught. And
So the defendant came to the car first, got in the passenger seat. He was all distraught.
said something along the lines of like, I think I just stabbed like 4 people or something.
He said, I think I just stabbed 4 people.
Along the lines of like, I think I just stabbed like 4 people or something like that, holding the knife.
He said he stabbed 4 people? He was holding the knife?
Wow. Somebody in my chat, it was a different day. They were like, we didn't even need to hear from any of these people. We could have just heard from just the defendant's friends and we would have known what happened. Yes, of course. But we do need to see other people's perspectives. And there was a lot of people there that were affected. There was a lot of people that have different perspectives. And they were involved in one way or another. So we did need to hear from them. And I think it was very valuable hearing from all those people. But you're right. He sees him holding a bloody knife in a panic. They speed off. And as they're leaving, Jack said, the defendant throws the knife out of the car window into the woods. Interesting, right? So that's pretty intense.
And did you text anything in the group chat after the incident at 43 Logan?
I did.
What did you text?
I guess said something along the lines of like, enjoy the hospital visit or something.
And at some point in time, you talked to Owen De Silva. Do you stay in Milford that night, or do you leave?
I go home.
And you go to home, and home back to Norwalk. And when you go back to Norwalk, when you get home, do you have any conversation with anybody when you get home?
Yeah, my father.
And did you tell your father what had happened?
I did.
And what, not what he said to you, but what was his appearance to you when you told him what had happened?
He kind of looked shocked and kind of gave me the impression that this was going to be something more serious than I kind of thought it was.
So there you have it. He talks to his father right away. So that's probably why his father was like, you know what, we're going to need an attorney. This is bad. This is worse than we thought. This is terrible. He had a knife. You gave him the knife. It was your knife. I mean, think about that being your kid. Of course you're going to secure immunity. And like Jake said, he didn't provide information to the police for months until he had a no prosecution deal. And of course, the defense is going to suggest, and we're not going to hear that right now because this is actually the end of this day and he picks up on the next, but that he tailored his testimony to please the state and save himself. Hey, it's a good argument. Do I think that that's 100% true? Oh, we are going to hear a little clip of that. We are going to hear a clip of that. Do I think that's 100% true? You tell me, because we're being the 13th juror, so don't just rely on what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Well, there was no conversation in the car about what had happened. It was just, how are we going to get back at these guys?
That was kind of what was going through my head almost. I'm not sure about Tyler, but that was a conversation we were talking about majority of the time.
And you texted on this group chat, enjoy the hospital stay?
I didn't know the severity of the situation.
Remember that? We heard from another witness that a couple of them said things like this. I think Griffin might have been like, yeah, just look at your own face. You need surgery, something like that. And they were going back and forth. But he and both Griffin did not know the severity of the situation. So they're still being a-holes in the chat. And he's like, enjoy the hospital visit, not knowing somebody died. Other people were stabbed. Now, whether or not he knew people were stabbed, I guess that's up for debate.
When Lito told me he stabbed somebody, I just assumed it wasn't anything major, just because people were still texting in the group chat.
Okay, so there he goes. Because I was thinking, wait a minute, no, you saw a bloody knife. What did you think was going on? And he, for whatever reason in his mind, as he's saying it, doesn't think it's that major because people are still in the group chat.
Like the group chats were still flowing, like spamming after everything happened. So I just assumed that they just jumped us. Lito stabbed maybe someone in the leg or something. That was just my smirky response, I guess. I didn't really know what was going on.
Even if he stabbed someone just in the leg, because he did stab Tommy Connery just in the leg, but we saw, with it being blurred on this channel, I meant to give you guys in Discord all the photos because I know nobody wants to like scrub through and find them themselves, but we know how bad those injuries were just to the leg. So it's not really an excuse to minimize it and say, oh, somebody got stabbed, but maybe it was just in the leg. So do I feel like he's minimizing the situation? Possibly.
I didn't know what happened.
You went home and you talked to your dad, and he said, "This is more serious than what you think, son."
Yeah, it was kind of that tone. Yeah.
And when the cops called you on May 15th and said, "We'd like to talk to you about this," you told them you weren't going to come in and talk to them, right?
I wasn't on the phone. I believe that's something my dad probably said.
You didn't go in and talk to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were worried about your involvement in this, right?
Yes.
And you waited 6 months until you got an agreement concerning prosecution in place before you talked to them, right?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you did that right here in this courthouse, did you not?
Yes.
And after you got that, it's the first time that you talked to anybody about this, right?
So I'm listening to the chat, and I would say this is not legal advice, of course, but I would definitely get the lawyer before I ever talk to any cops. Don't even care if I'm completely innocent. I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know what they're going to write down. I don't know how they're going to interpret what I said. I don't want anything handled by a cop without my attorney there. So I would always say, as a friend, I would always say, always get an attorney. 100%. If you were involved, you saw something, you're on the perimeter of something that you may be charged with as an accomplice or an accessory, even if you might think, hey, I just saw something, I'm not involved. Maybe you had a responsibility to call the police. Maybe they're going to get you on, you didn't do enough, neglect, whatever it is. I would never trust a police department because they are trying to, let's just say they have a job to do. And there is a such thing as admitting things that you didn't do. And you don't want to put yourself in a position where you don't know the tactics that are being used, whereas an attorney would. And they would say, no, don't answer that. Or no, my client's not going to answer that. Or they might tailor a response for you that's going to be way more advantageous for you because you just never know. So I understand the inclination to be like, oh, we're innocent, let's go to the cops, even if my kid did it. But you don't necessarily want your kid to be arrested on the spot, taken away from you, ripped out of your arms, and then try to get an attorney and then try to get him out of jail and have to bail him out and all those things. So I think getting the attorney first is key.
That is true.
And you're telling us now today that you gave Mr. Valle the knife before driving everybody back down to 43 Laurel Glen Drive, right?
Yes.
And this prosecution agreement that you have, it's for complete immunity, right?
From the events that happened on that day, yeah.
You can't be prosecuted for anything that happened on May 14th, right?
Not at this time, though.
And those potential things that you might have been prosecuted for could be murder, right?
I was told assault in the first degree or something along those lines.
You would agree that the agreement itself talks about the homicide of James McGrath and the assaults on Thomas Connery Jr., Ryan Hines, and Faison Teal that took place on May 14th, right?
That's correct.
One of the things that you could be prosecuted for would be being an accessory to a murder, right?
That's what I was just saying. Like, you never know what the prosecution's going to end up charging you with.
I think that's possible.
And could be prosecuted for assaults, correct?
I believe so.
You could be possibly prosecuted for conspiracy to commit those things, correct?
I guess so.
And you've had what's explained to you, what's known as your maximum exposure explained to you, right? That if you were prosecuted for these things and if you were convicted of these things, you could spend your life in prison, correct?
I guess so.
I'm sure his parents were feverishly Googling what would happen, and they were like, yeah, we're not talking to police right now until we know exactly what we're going to do in this situation, and getting an attorney was smart. Do I agree that, like, I don't know this person. I don't know this kid. I don't know what he's like in real life. Knowing that he was involved the way that he was, I'm really not going to be someone who places blame or tries to wrap my brain around it, because all I'm trying to look at is what's within the four walls of this courtroom at this point. And if the prosecution was okay with giving him an immunity deal, then I have to think that a lot of this wouldn't have come out if we didn't hear from this person.
Right? 60 years for accessory to murder, right?
So
I really thought the defense should have not done this, because he's actually showing the jury how much his own client could be looking at. So I felt like, ooh, maybe you shouldn't be going into these details, because if he, who didn't do the actual stabbing, you're saying all these things like they're facts, well, now it makes the defendant look even worse, in my opinion.
20 years for an assault in the first degree, right?
no.
You didn't want to tell anybody your involvement in this case until you got that in place, right?
Yeah.
And your understanding is that you have to come in here and testify truthfully in order for this agreement to hold, right?
Yeah.
Your immunity from all those things depends upon who thinking that you testified truthfully.
I think the state.
Not me, right? I don't make that decision, do I? The state's attorney makes that decision, right?
I believe so.
You got to come in here, testify truthfully, or you could find yourself prosecuted for all those things.
I believe so.
And so you gave them a statement on November 2nd, right? And then they told you, you know what? We want to talk to you again. And you talked to them again on November 28th, right?
Yes.
Because they wanted to clarify some things, right?
Yes.
They wanted to clarify the timing of when the knife was exchanged, right?
I believe so.
And they wanted to clarify why your phone had been reset on October 1st, 2022.
I thought this was interesting. Speaking of interesting things, why was your phone, sir? Why was your phone erased? This takes me so far back to Karen Reed's trial right now with the butt dials and the erasing of the phones and the trashing on Marine bases. But why was your phone? Why was your phone erased?
Before you spoke to them, right? Factory reset, right?
No. I had water damage in the phone, and I got a new phone, and I think the iCloud messed up. I was syncing between my mother's and mine. Our texts are kind of merged. Nothing was deleted, but they couldn't find the group chat. I removed myself from the group chat after the event happened.
So when they looked at his phone, they couldn't find the group chat. He had removed himself from the group chat.
So by the time you went and talked to the officers after you'd gotten your immunity agreement in place, your phone had been reset.
It wasn't reset.
It was a new phone altogether?
I got a new phone, but everything was still on it and intact.
I believe they could have got, oh no, they couldn't have gotten an extraction because he got a new phone. So that is an interesting question, right? Like, what was on there, Mr. Snyder? Were you saying something you shouldn't have been saying? Did you say, like, I'm not saying this really happened, because you could also get it from the other person's text, right? Essentially, I don't know how to group chat would work, meaning I would assume you'd be able to see the text, because remember when we saw Proctor's text, it only showed, ow, I just hit myself on there. It only showed his phone number, and somebody had to corroborate that this was Proctor. So I'm thinking, yeah, this might be showcasing like, oh, look, he was trying to be shady, but I think they would have been able to still get those text messages.
That's what they told you? We want to come in and clarify why your phone is everything and intact?
Oh, I didn't respond. I didn't respond to anybody texting me for the first month, 3 weeks to a month after everything happened. But people were texting me, so they assumed, I think, that I was removing messages that I was sending back when I just wasn't responding. So I think they wanted to have me come in and just explain why there weren't any texts on my end. I was advised not to text people.
So, sir, you're coming in here and you're telling us, or trying to tell us, as close to what you told those officers, right?
Yes.
Because you fear if you change any of that, the state's going to think you're not testifying truthfully, right?
There wouldn't be any need to change it. It's all been the truth.
And you're telling us that the knife that you gave to Mr. Valle, right?
After he asked for it, yes.
That was your knife, right?
My knife.
That you kept in the vehicle, right? That you drove these folks back down to this party, right?
Yeah, Tyler and Lito.
Tyler and Lito, right? After you gave them this knife, right?
After I handed it to Lito, yeah.
And now you're telling us that the knife was thrown by Mr. Valle.
Yeah.
That's why we can't find the knife, right?
I would assume so.
Sir, it's not that you needed to get rid of that knife because, again, for 6 months you didn't want to talk to anybody about this, right?
No.
Nothing further. Thank you.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. Did they not ever find the knife? I'm guessing they didn't, and that was like a picture of it from before. You tell me if you know. But if it's going ahead, don't tell us. But despite all this aggressive questioning, I have to say Jack stuck to his story, whether or not we want to believe he stuck to it because he's afraid, because he has immunity, or if it's the truth. It's pretty much in line with what a lot of people are going to say. So you're only hearing him, and then we're going to hear from others. So it's hard because you're like, right, he has immunity, but it is going to be corroborated by people who don't have immunity, that did not hand the defendant a knife, that did not have a reason to take a deal. So I tend to believe that the things he said were the truth, but of course they don't necessarily help the defense, right? Because the most important part of that about this was that he admitted the defendant came back and said that he basically stabbed people and he had given him the knife and that he armed himself intentionally and that he knew he stabbed people when he left. It wasn't like an accident and he didn't know what happened and later he finds out. No, he comes back and he says he stabbed people. So, I mean, I really think that this was one of the most significant witnesses of this entire trial, even though I still think that tomorrow's case, and I hope you guys can be here, but I think tomorrow's day in court, which would be day 7. I know we're behind, but let me tell you, this is actually good because there was no court today. Tomorrow's closing arguments. Then it's the holiday. Hope we have a great holiday. And then they're coming back on Monday for deliberation. So I don't think they're deliberating over the weekends. I think the judge said she was going to do jury instructions afterward, like when they come back, and then we're going to start deliberations. I can't talk in the beginning of the week. But wow, that was a lot. I'm glad we got 2 days out of the way. One of them was short. That's why I was able to do 2 days, because there was a lot to go over. But now that I'm coming to the end, I just have a few interesting things to talk about. And also I can answer some questions if anybody has any. But I wanted to tell you something. We are doing something here now that I was only doing on my Patreon. So if you are a law baddie, you will now have access to something that I was doing over there. I know I have a lot going on. I am not expecting people to be on every different thing I'm doing. Choose whatever one you like. And now I'm just letting you know of a perk that you get that you don't have to do anything extra for. It was meant to be for my patrons. Ended up that I can't go natively live on Patreon because it just will not work for me right now. So we're doing a book club every week, live book club. And we already did one of the days of the book club, and it was chapter 1 through 3. So what I will do is I will leave it in the member section here on this YouTube. I will leave it in the members tab later today, where not only will I leave I will leave the book we're reading, the link to the book we're reading. You can get it on Audible. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, stuff like that. And then I'll show you the very first private video. It's a private video. It's not going to be posted live. This is just something for members. If you're interested in it, and we're going to be reading it. We did the first 3 chapters. I think it was yesterday. My mind is everywhere. And then we're doing the next 3 chapters next week. Try not to read ahead if you do join, because the whole idea is this is an unsolved case. So we're kind of coming up with our theories, and we're talking within the chapters. So you don't want to really go ahead. But also, thank you so much for all the gifted memberships. And if you want a gifted membership, don't forget to open yourself up for gifting. That's something you can do in your settings. And don't forget about our Discord. I know a lot of people don't like Discord. Well, guess what? We all hated it, didn't we? Talk about it in the chat. We hated it, but now we love it. Because guess what? Today, we were all chatting on there during Brian Koberger's plea deal. So it was like our own little chat. So sometimes I can't jump on right away, and it's just another way for us all to discuss things. We've got all the cases listed, different chat rooms that they're called channels, but different chat rooms for different topics. And I just want to end with one other thing. All of you are like friends to me. Honestly, that's why I started going live. I do a lonely job, and I love our chat. I love our community. I really genuinely do. I missed you guys. I don't want to tear up, but I missed you guys when I wasn't here. And I was so frantic because I was like, oh no, they're going to think I abandoned my channel and stuff. I never like to do a pity party for myself because I consider myself pretty strong. I've been through a lot in my life, but sometimes we just need to take a breather and realize things are out of our control and they're just happening so fast. So, a couple days ago, my stepmother fell and broke her hip, and it was pretty devastating because my father's been taking care of her around the clock for 5 years. She has a port in her chest, she has tuberculosis, and she gets infusions every day for hours on end, and my dad is her sole caretaker, and it's just a lot for him. And, selfishly, I really wanted, everyone to be at my wedding, but unfortunately my dad can't be there, and that was really sad. And just everything going on with not knowing what's going to happen to my stepmother. She's in her 80s. It was a successful surgery yesterday. They were able to replace her hip. But a lot of you know when an older person falls like that, there's a lot of complications that can happen. So, put out some prayers and positive thoughts, hoping for the best for everything. But I just wanted you to know what was kind of going on, because I know I kind of went MIA, and it wasn't on purpose for me doing it for any other reason, but I needed a breather and to speak with my family. And then after that, my mom last night, I was blowing up my phone. I finally had to silence it because I was like, what is going on? And it was 4:00 in the morning. I finally wake up with the baby. I'm feeding the baby, and I look down. My stepdad. So this is my mom. Okay, first it was my dad, my biological dad, and my stepmother who fell. And then now my biological mother is reaching out to me. We're very close, telling me that her husband, my stepfather, was on a trip to see his family, gets out of his truck, face plants, was tired, was tripping, face plants, and was found face down. Someone had to take him to the emergency room. He's in the middle of nowhere. My mom didn't know what hospital he was in. I swear I felt like I was doing a true crime case because I was like, oh my God, this is like those moments when people are telling you things and you're like, what? And it's been really tough. He does have a brain injury. They are still, oh my God, sorry, I'm like kind of flustered. They're still assessing his situation right now, but like all these things are happening. And I'm just like, how does he, I mean, thank goodness he's like in the hospital and he's safe, but my mom couldn't even find out what hospital he was in last night. And I was scrambling this morning trying to help her, and we only knew was in like, I don't know what she said. Let me look at my text. Maybe I can still find it in here. Somewhere in Georgia. And I was just like, this is just incredible. I cannot believe this is happening. Because we were just talking about how when people fall, things can happen to them. And then he has a brain bleed. So I don't know what they're going to be doing with that. And I looked it up online, and I'm looking right now at where she said it happened. Oh, Richmond Hill, Georgia. She's like, I found it. But so that happened this morning, and I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening. I really can't. So I just wanted you to know that. I don't usually talk about like my personal things, but that's what's going on. So please, put the good vibes out there that everything's going to be okay. And I'll still be here. This really helps me to get my mind off everything, because if I sit and just like wallow, it's not good for my mental health. I need to be doing things. I'm the type of person that like always needs to be busy. But I just want to thank all of you, especially like everyone in my Discord that kind of like knows more about what's going on. And thank you to all my members on both my main channel and here. I'm a little bit behind on our private video, only because like I was a little bit like, no, I reached out to Stephanie Harlow and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing that same case for my membership. But you know what? We have different perspectives on things. And I think you're really going to still want to see that video as well if you are a member over there. And I'm sorry there's so many like different places I'm doing things, but it happens this way, and it's how I've got it set up right now. But always just choose what's in your abilities and finances and stuff, and don't ever feel like you have to do anything above and beyond. I take a break from things myself all the time, whether that's sponsorship or what are they called? Subscriptions. I take a break from my subscriptions. I take a break from donating and things like that. And sometimes I just need that. So thank you all so much for being here and being behind with me. I will be back tomorrow. I'm also filming a couple videos. We have a 2-parter coming out on Dark Livity. We're also going to be combining our Patreon so that it's Behind the Yellow Tape membership is going to be Dark Livity and my main channel. So you're going to get bonus podcast episodes on there that we're creating and a lot more. So just know that. But if you're already doing the YouTube thing, don't think you have to do that, okay? That's just something I want to mention. But thank you all so very much. I'm going to go and have some food. I hope you all take care of yourself, and I hope we all have a great holiday weekend. But I will be back tomorrow with another recap. So I will see you